Well, electronics company Reunert has a market cap of nearly 14 billion rand and owns Nashua Mobile, CBI and African Cables. The group's first half-year headline earnings per share for the period ending March are expected on the 28th of May and will be between 12 and 18% higher. Reunert has a price-to-earnings ratio of 8. The electrical sector. Let's focus here. Can we get excited about all things electric this evening?
Sure, why not? You know, South Africa, of course, to sketch the background, is a country that had consolidated its electrical grid after starting out in a series of cities which had their own little power stations. Eskom was a organization formed in the 1940s, 50s, which then began to consolidate a national grid. We know that we had electrically intensive industrialization which happened. Residential electrification was somewhat limited, and then after democracy came in '94, the decision was that everybody should have electricity in their houses. Why not? So we've seen a big surge in companies supplying electrical equipment, which is obviously cables, it's transformers, and then in the household context, it's also switches, you know, like trip switches. That's what CBI makes. And then, of course, it's lighting and related products. So why not? A good industry to be talking about. Reunert is the biggest player in that space.
I wouldn't like to go up against Paul in a general knowledge test, that's for sure. He seems to know everything about everything. Anthony, your thoughts on Reunert? Let's focus in on the stock.
Well, conceptually, we really like the electrification infrastructure space. And I think Reunert is one of the key players in the sector, as Paul has said. I think what's interesting is that in the cable manufacturing sector, that's basically African Cables, CBI and Aberdare Cables, about 50% of the capacity in the last 4 years has been taken out of the equation. At the same time, Eskom is expected to spend about 26 billion rand on transmission, and the municipalities have about another 27 billion rands worth of transmission infrastructure spend backlog. So we see, although margins are paper thin in the electrical cable manufacturing environment at the moment, we expect a big event. That's some big chunky tenders to come out for the next 6 to 12 months and margins to increase dramatically in cable manufacturing. But Reunert is kind of a well-owned stock, well-liked, fully priced, one could argue, but it has some interesting add-ons to it as well in the Nashua business and some of the leasing businesses.
Well, let's just pause there. Fully priced at 68 Rand 67, despite the interesting add-ons that Anthony is referring to.
Look, it's a slightly boring industrial holding group. It didn't really do much. It consolidated some quite nice assets. Nashua, of course, had a big boost when the cell phone industry took off, and Nashua Mobile applied for one of those licenses. It basically transferred its expertise in leasing out photocopiers to leasing out cell phones. Why not?
You're making the industry sound exciting. Yay!
They disposed of their Nokia Siemens interests, but they had a strong CEO in Bull Pretorius. He kind of ran the group. Brait had a go at trying to untopple him, and that didn't work. So one way or another, it's kind of done well, but it's kind of disappointed over the years. And one wonders whether now is the time that it can finally get cracking. I don't know, though. I mean, you know, it really needs to show some collective leadership. And we know that it had a CEO, Nick Wenzel, for a while, who basically left after a year. And then the financial director, Dave Rawlinson, recently took over. So I don't know what's going on there in the boardroom.
Do you know what's going on in the boardroom?
Yeah, I think that Nick Wenzel wasn't particularly well liked, and he was asked to move on to greener pastures. That's what I hear. I mean, it's certainly unconfirmed.
Well, is the CFO well liked? Let's hope.
Let's hope so.
How long has he been in position?
Just a couple of months now. So it was in 2011 when these changes happened. But I can only imagine maybe the board is wondering what the strategic direction is for the group. Because as Anthony says, it's got quite well-positioned assets, not much excitement, not much attention. The mobile phone business, as you know, the mobile operators, MTN and Vodacom, have been basically hoovering up all of these guys. The problem with Nashua Mobile is that they're one of the remaining few service providers that is non-network committed. So it would be quite a tricky process of disassociating it.
Hot or not for Reunert?
Look, I modestly like it because I'm quite drawn to cases where people have these diversified groups which potentially could, you know, get broken up and unbundled. So I'm going to go hot
modestly like doesn't translate into hot.
Well, you know, I like GE globally. I like Bidvest here. I like, you know, those stories. So if you're patient and you're prepared to hold it, a quality asset, so I'm going to give it a modest hot.
Modest hot. Anthony?
We think the sector is super hot, but this one's possibly fully priced. And we'll talk about some better opportunities we think down the line.